Vicky Ford, thank you for your time. A really important day today as we talk about a care review, which some people will say is long overdue. Is it fair to say that the current care system and the outcomes of the current care system show that actually it's currently failing a lot of people?
Oh, so Mick, so thank you so much for inviting me on today. And as you say, it's a really, really important day. So we are going to be launching the care review today, and I'm really proud. I'll be supporting the Education Secretary. And this is an absolute once in a generation opportunity to reform the care systems and services for vulnerable children. We have got the fantastic Josh McAllister on board, who's been the chief executive of Frontline, which is an organisation that trains social workers, and he's going to step aside from that job to lead this work and chair the review. And that is to really look at the challenges facing the system. We'll benefit from his understanding and his experience because he's already been developing and implementing innovative solutions. And there have been many improvements to the care system over the past few years. We've seen improvements in adoption, children having to wait far less long before they find that loving forever adopted family. That's been great. That's partly because of the work that we've put into the Adoption Support Fund. And so today as well, we're going to confirm that fund will continue beyond March this year. It helps not only adoptive families, but also what we call special guardianship families. So that's helping children to come out of the care system, not have to stay in care, but to go and live with other members of their extended families. And nearly 64,000 families have benefited from that fund. We've also made great strides in recent years at improving the education outcomes for children in care. It used to be that they were the most likely group of children to be excluded from school. Now they're the least likely group to be excluded from school, and that's because of the work we've put in through what we call virtual school heads who support those children. We've also been making great strides to improve local authorities' children's services, and we set up a few years ago an intervention and improvement service that works with local authorities. And as a result, we have a third more of our local authorities rated as good or outstanding by Ofsted. So there's clearly areas where it works well, but there are some children for whom we need to do much more. And this review will bring together a huge range of experience and expertise from across the sector. We'll be listening deeply to the voices and experience of children, young people or adults who have been looked after or who've received support from a social worker. And we've already published the terms of reference, setting out the themes that need to be addressed and how it will respond to the changing needs of children in care or those at risk of going into care. It is such an important piece of work. Social workers up and down the country, do the most amazing job. They've continued to do that through the pandemic, but we know that there's more that we can do to support them and to support the young people that they help. And that is why this review will be looking at all the details.
Can I ask you about that? There will be people listening to this now who've gone through the care system themselves, who will be thinking, if they knew more about my experience, the system could change to help people like me. There'll be people listening up and down the country. Are you keen to hear from those people?
Absolutely. The voices and experience of those who've been through the care system are absolutely core to this review. And as I said, we have over the past few years brought in some really big improvements for both children in care, like that virtual school head that supports them through their education journey, but also for care leavers. So a few years ago, we launched the Care Leaver Covenant, and that brings together both public sector, private sector, businesses, voluntary organisations to support care leavers. We run our Care Leaver internship programme that's continued to sort of lead from the front through Whitehall to make sure that those who've been looked after get that first step on their employment journey and that first experience of work. And that's been a fantastic project, but there's always more that we should be doing, and we want to hear the voices of those care experienced people.
Is that not just for those who've had a positive experience, that there are people now, the propensity of those who end up in prison or end up homeless, that you also want to hear from them, people who've had negative experiences in the care system?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's a really sad statistic that so many young people who've grown up in care have ended up in very, very difficult circumstances, find themselves unemployed or homeless, or get in prison from time to time. And that's one of the reasons why we focus so hard in recent years on giving the education support to the children who are looked after, so that they finish school, that they get decent qualifications and can move on to the next stages of their journey, and also give more support to those young people as care leavers. That's been a good change, but I think that there's always more than we can do. And this care review, as I said, it's a once in a generation chance to really reform the system and look deep down at what more we can do.
People have, complex lives for many different reasons. Those who've been through the care system, those who haven't. So what's sort of the acceptable sort of level that you'd be hoping to achieve for people who've gone through the care system? What would be an ultimate ambition to support young people who've gone through that care system?
So I want looked after children to have as good outcomes as every other child. And I think that that's what we should all be striving. These are our children. These are children who've often, suffered deep trauma. That's why they've come into the care system. And we need to make sure that we as a society, as a country, are there to support them. Some of those children will be will go into adoption. We want to make sure that the adoption services are there to support the families of those children, and that's why we have the Adoption Support Fund, which we're increasing and extending today. But we also know that there are some for whom that's not right. So I also want to make sure that if a child doesn't need to come into care, that we can support the family more and get that early help to the family so that they can stay together. And that's why, for example, we've also been championing the Family Hub approach, which puts that wraparound support, bringing together all sorts of different services to help support families and prevent that breakdown which leads to children coming into care. But fundamentally, those who do come into the care system need to know that they have the same life chances as every other child.